saw this or not, but there was this crazy situation where two of the rappers from this group called the Migos were apparently fighting backstage, and it got kind of messy, and so eventually they had to be broken up and whatnot. Now, I'm not here to talk about the drama of the fight. I'm not here to talk about that. And also, R.I.P. To Takeoff. Takeoff was a member of the Migos, and Takeoff's death apparently was the traumatic experience that they suffered that probably created a lot of stress and a lot of tension. But one of the things I want to talk about, and the reason I want to talk about the Migos, because they do have cultural influence, whether we like it or not. They are out there, whether we like it or not. The Migos matter, whether we like it or not. And the reason I want to talk about this is because there is a huge black wealth lesson connected to this. Now, for those of you on Instagram, I'm actually going to just kind of flip it so you guys can actually see the screen over here, where we got the Migos up on the screen. And here's the deal. The Migos is a group that sold millions of records around the world. They've made millions of dollars over time. They are pretty much, seen as one of the leading hip hop groups in this world, not just in this country, but in the world. And with all this infighting, a lot of money gets lost. A lot of black wealth goes down the drain when you don't have conflict resolution skills. And so, anyway, by the way, as you come into the chat, let me know what city you're from. Shout out what city you're from. Also, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, share, subscribe. So here's the thing, right? Like, I'm not here to be preachy about it. I'm not here to gossip about rappers. I really don't care, about why the fight happened. I've heard different stories. Some people said that it's because one of them didn't want the other one to do a tribute performance at the Grammys, and that's fine. I think these things happen, right? It's happened before. You've seen other groups go back and forth. But one of the things I need y'all to understand that's really clear. You guys know I'm an expert on wealth, particularly black wealth, and I also study extensively where black wealth is going. We talk about black wealth going down. We talk about racism. We talk about white supremacy. We talk about all these things that basically put black people in an inferior economic position, right? Give me a yes in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. Well, one of the things that doesn't get discussed very often is how culture plays a huge part in whether or not you have wealth or no wealth. Culture is everything. Unfortunately for hip hop, the hip hop is very pro wealth for white people. Hip hop is very pro wealth for Jewish people. Hip hop is very pro wealth for record labels, but hip hop is very anti wealth for the black community. It is extremely anti wealth for the black community, and so what I'm going to do is lay out a couple of reasons why. Number one, when you have some of your most influential black men in this country mass promoting drug addiction to young people, I've never seen a drug addict really do all that well in life. Don't get me wrong; it doesn't mean it can't happen. But a person who's high and doped up all the time is usually not going to be able to be successful. They're not going to be alert. They're not going to have a work ethic. They're not going to be reliable. Never work with a drug addict. I don't even mess with you. If you're a drug addict, I won't even do business with you because a drug addict is not at his best, right? So when you have music that is mass promoting to young black men, you're $1 trillion asset. Your kids are your asset. When you have music that is promoting drug addiction to young black men, well, you're promoting failure to these young men. You're promoting a life of misery and struggle. If you don't believe me, go listen to some of these young rappers who are starting to figure that out. Listen to when Lil Wayne is honest and talks about what drinking lean every day is doing to his body. Remember when Rick Ross was having those seizures on airplanes? You think about rappers who died from drug overdoses. I heard NBA Youngboy actually talking about the impact of his music and how many people's lives have been affected, right? So ultimately, hip hop is very pro wealth for white people. Hip hop is pro wealth for Jewish people. Hip hop is anti wealth for black people because you're the ones that are influenced the most by the culture. Also, on top of that, when you talk about just the sloppiness of your Planned Parenthood, basically. What do I mean by that when I say Planned Parenthood? I'm not talking about those clinics. I'm talking about planting your seed, how you have your kids, right? When you have the mass promotion of sexual irresponsibility amongst young men, you're creating lots of broken families. You're creating a baby mama culture, a baby daddy culture, a baby mama drama culture. Give me a yes if you know what I'm talking about. Give me a yes if you've seen how many times baby mama, baby daddy issues has led to tremendous wealth loss in a family. You can't work together to get money because you can't barely keep money. You're not playing powernomics. You're playing strugglenomics. You're not getting ahead of the curve. You're behind the curve. When you have a broken family, it's very hard for you to do the things that a structured family family can do. Where's some other areas where hip hop is anti-black wealth? The third area might be in terms of just the mass promotion of ignorance. Now, again, I started off talking about the Migos. And here's what I want to say about the Migos. Look, I'm not in their age demographic. These guys are 28, 29, 30 years old. I'm not here to diss. I'm not here to attack nobody or anything like that. But I don't really see much of anything in what they're doing that is promoting anything other than black male anti-intellectualism, ignorance. So when you show up and you're speaking, with proper sentences, or you're trying to make plans for your life, or you're trying to strategize, or you're trying to learn or trying to study, that's kind of looked down upon. That's what they call an anti-intellectual environment. Where has anybody ever seen this? Has anybody ever seen a smart young black man who pretends to be dumb just so he can fit in with a bunch of dumbasses? Give me a yes in the chat if you've ever seen like a smart black boy who could be a scientist, he could be an engineer, he could be a doctor, he could be a lawyer, but he dumbs himself down in order to fit into the culture of stupidity. Give me a yes in the chat if you've seen this. This happens all the time. And so a lot of this really comes from what goes on with hip hop music. Well, here's the thing. Here's what you got to understand about wealth. Stupid people don't know how to make money very well most of the time. Stupid, unprepared people who don't study, who don't learn, are not going to get ahead as well as people who actually know information. I'm not saying that there aren't exceptions. 1 out of every million idiots becomes a millionaire because maybe he gets paid to be stupid, right? You have rappers that get paid to be ignorant, right? So stupid people can sometimes get ahead. I'm not trying to say that if you're stupid, you ain't got a chance. I'm just saying that you might, unless you win the lottery ticket of stupidity, chances are a stupid, unprepared person is not going to do as well economically as a person who is smart, a person who studies, a person who reads books, a person who learns rules, a person who figures out processes, a person who makes plans, a person who has strategies. So give me a yes if you understand that. This is simple shit. This is not calculus, everybody. This is arithmetic. This ain't even algebra. People that study things get good at those things. If I want to win a Super Bowl, I got to study how to play football. I can't sit around and never go to football practice, never learn what a football is, never learn any offensive schemes, never learn any defensive schemes, and expect to win a Super Bowl. That's not possible. So when you go out into this world, when you send your little black boys into this world, I'm going to get back to the Migos in a minute. The Migos were kind of my takeoff point. RIP to takeoff, right? That I'm taking off from the Migos, but we going to another level. I might start on the ground, but just like when I went to my flight lesson today, because I'm getting my pilot's license, I start on the ground and then we take off and we go into the air. So we're taking off. We're not sitting on the ground. We're not sitting in the low vibrational frequency space. So I need you to understand that. And if that's a problem for you, then there's plenty of other channels you can go to. People who don't study and don't learn don't know what's going on. Like they say that they say there are 3 types of people. There are people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and then the people who sit around and say, what happened? Right? So they're the people who make things happen, the people who watch those people because they're too scared to act. They're not ready to be bosses. They're not ready to make a move. And then you got people who don't even know what the hell's going on. So when you're distracted by entertainment, when you're sitting up, you spend more time watching the Grammys than you would ever spend even with your own kids or reading a book or learning a skill, then guess what? You're going to be one of those people that looks up and one day your neighbor's going to have more money than you. Your homeboy's going to be doing well and you ain't. So-and-so down the street's going to be doing better than you because you wasn't paying attention. So that's the other thing. So as I mentioned, I go back to my original premise. Hip hop music is very profitable for white people. Hip hop music is very profitable for Jewish people. Hip hop is very profitable for record labels. Hip hop is incredibly unprofitable for black people. Everybody gets rich at your expense. Why? Well, because they've convinced you to glorify people who are promoting a death culture. Look at Takeoff. Takeoff's in the ground because one of my friends said when Tupac died, she said, if you keep rapping about flowers, eventually somebody's going to bring you some roses. I'm not dissing. This is not a diss. This is just a fact. I don't have to tell you how many rappers die every single month. That's already a known fact. If Black Lives Matter to you, then you will care about this issue as much as you care about the death of Tyree Nichols. You can't just care about a black male death when they're killed by a cop. You got to also care about black male death when they're killed by some. Do me a favor, guys. Please hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, share, subscribe. My name's Dr. Boyce Watkins. And by the way, I have books out if you guys want to know about it. One of my books is called Black American Money. I don't talk about it much, but if you go to drboycebooks.com, I've got a whole series actually, Black American Money Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. You can go take a look. Just go to drboycebooks.com if you'd like to take a look. Also, if you could, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. And those of you that are on the YouTube channel, I actually have my amazing son Quincy here is helping me, and he actually has your comments on the screen. So what we might do is try to pull up a comment every now and then and answer a question or two. So let's get back to this whole thing with the Migos and the Grammys and the whole back and forth between Quavo and, I get them mixed up, I'm sorry, the Quavo and Offset. And I guess they're going back and forth over whether or not the tribute to Takeoff should have happened. Again, I'm not here to gossip about that. I'll let you go find that on another channel. I'm really here to talk about the inability to resolve conflicts, particularly amongst black men, and how that costs money. You know, unfortunately, because people reject efforts to elevate our thinking, we have scenarios where people think, for example, like Will Smith did that night. They look at Will Smith, a guy who got up on stage and slapped the hell out of Chris Rock on literally the biggest night of his life. He decides to get up on stage, walk up there and slap another black man because this black man said something about his wife. You know, so Will Smith made this move, and I'm not here to diss Will. I know Will's family. I don't know Will. I know his brother Harry. His brother Harry's very smart. I talked to Harry for hours. I love talking to this guy. I've never met Will. So this is not a diss on Will Smith, but one of the things I want you to consider is that there is, again, a culture of violence associated with black men that I don't think is our best look. I'm not saying that, you know, some people don't need to be slapped. I'm not saying that sometimes fights aren't going to happen. I've been in physical altercations myself, but here's the deal. Here's what you got to understand is that when you go back to the Migos and Takeoff and Offset fighting at the Grammys, again, this is a tradition. If you go back 25 years at the Source Awards, there were dudes fighting in the crowd at the Source Awards. Anybody remember that? How many of you remember? Give me a guess in the chat if you remember the Source Awards way back in the 90s when a bunch of rappers got together with some other rappers, and next thing you know, chairs were flying and people were punching each other, became WWE. You know, and black male violence is great entertainment for other people. Like, what's it really? When you die, when you beat each other's asses, when you hurt each other, when you harm each other, people love that. They love it. They cheer it on. When Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre were doing a performance one time, and they they were, you know, sort of doing this superhero appearance. They were in front of this crowd full of white people, and they went out and they were calling themselves the N-word and all this other stuff. And one of the little skits they did was a black man who came into a store, pulled out a strap like he's going to shoot the other one, and then Snoop jumps in like a superhero and kills a black dude. He says something like, oh, yeah, he says, yeah, die, nigga, die, or something like that, right? And the white people go crazy. White people go crazy. Literally, he's saying, die, N-word, die. And white people are screaming and hollering. Now, I need you to understand, what if that was a crowd full of Trump supporters, and somebody said, die, N-word, die, and people started cheering and going crazy? Would that be acceptable? Would that be okay? Would you think, oh, it's all right? Well, you know, everybody wants black people to die. And what would you do? Like, seriously, I need you to really understand the hypocrisy of our behavior. We celebrate our own death. We have music being played on airways around the country that glorifies the murder of black people. So whenever there's an Emmett Till type incident, which happens every single week in cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, etc., the lynchings are occurring all the time. When these incidents happen, it's cool. It's par for the course. Because nobody really cares when a black man gets hurt. Nobody cares when a black man dies. So here's what I want you to understand. That when you don't have the ability to resolve your conflicts in an appropriate way, not only are you putting each other in harm's way, that's already established, but in addition to that, you are missing an amazing opportunity to build wealth and possibility for yourself. When I talk about the Migos and the thing between Quavo and Takeoff, Quavo and Offset, I want to make sure I get the names right. So they're fighting at the Grammys over whatever the hell they're fighting about. What you got to understand here is this. Whatever you think about the Migos, whatever you think about them, I know, you know, again, this is not my style. I'm not in their demographic. I think mumble rap is kind of an insult to hip hop, to be honest with you, but maybe it's because I'm 51 and I'm not 21. So I'm not even going to try to be a kid right now, because that's not my job. My job is to be a grown ass man. But one of the things about the Migos that is 100% fundamentally true is that this brand is $1 billion asset. This is $1 billion asset. Literally, if this brand is properly managed, this brand could make well over $1 billion by the time these guys are done. This could put their great great grandchildren through college. They could go to Harvard off of this money, right? And so when you are in a conflict and you're ready to go like punch out your homeboy because that's what the streets told you to do, the thug life told you you need to go and run up on somebody because they made you mad or because your feelings are hurt and you don't know how to express that. You got to understand you're putting generational wealth at risk, and it happens all the time. Lots of generational wealth has been destroyed because of the inability or the lack of effort to properly resolve conflicts between the parties that are involved in the situation. Let me give you extreme examples to help you understand how black wealth is either destroyed or elevated based on your ability to resolve conflicts. And I hope I can convince you that literally all of us that are descendants of slaves, how many of you are descendants of slaves? How many of you are descendants of slaves? If you are a descendant of slavery, raise your hand. And raise your hand. Say yes in the chat if you are a descendant of slavery. I'm going to say this. Every descendant of slavery probably needs a therapist. And not only do you need a therapist, but anybody you're trying to work with as a group, you might need a therapist that's going to help you manage the group so that you can resolve your conflicts. This is a wealth building strategy. Literally, it's a wealth building strategy. So let me give you some examples to help you understand what I'm talking about. Let's look at a group like 3-6 Mafia. 3-6 Mafia is a group that was making a lot of money, that was killing it, murdering the game, just making money hand over fist. Could have been $1 billion asset also, maybe at least a $200-400 million asset. I really believe 3-6 Mafia, if they properly branded themselves and made the right moves and monetized their brand appropriately, I believe 3-6 Mafia could have made at least $100 million in the course of the. I'm gonna make over $100 million on my brand, on the name Boyce Watkins alone. I know they can make $100 million off 3-6 Mafia. I know they could have done that. Right? But why did they not make any money? Well, because people started fighting. Well, why did they start fighting? Well, ask Juicy J. Juicy J was one of the members of 3-6 Mafia. He said, we started fighting because everybody was on drugs. And this is where I keep telling you guys that this drug culture is a anti-wealth culture. It's anti-black. It's anti-black wealth. With all that drugs have done, I mean, seriously, I need y'all to process this with me for a moment. How many of you in here, give me a yes in the chat, how many of you have ever had a relative get hooked on drugs? How many of you have ever had a relative get killed over drugs? Give me a yes in the chat if you've ever had a relative go to prison over drugs. And I want you to think about those relatives who have either been addicted to drugs, got killed over drugs, or went to prison over drugs. How did they do financially? How did things turn out for them? Did they end up on top? Are they winning or are they losing? Where are they now? Like, where did they leave a powerful wealth legacy? Or did they leave a legacy of GoFundMe accounts, family embarrassment, trauma, tragedy, abandonment, and tons of emotional pain to the people that they love? I need y'all to really think about this. This is why maybe, and people think I sound like an extremist. I only sound like an extremist because I believe in black excellence in its purest form. I only sound like an extremist because I believe we can do better. I sound like an extremist because I believe that we have solutions. I sound like an extremist because I don't believe in sitting around complaining and whining and crying about your problems. I believe in actually fixing them. So it may sound extreme, but I really believe we should have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to drugs. I really do. I cannot think of any space where having your youngest, most intelligent, most capable young people running around high and drunk all the time has ever worked out for black people. It's never worked out for that little girl who's waiting for her daddy to pick her up from school and he ain't show up because he high. I ain't never seen that end well for anybody. So Juicy J from 3-6 Mafia mentioned that 3-6 Mafia broke up because everybody started using drugs and then everybody started fighting and then their ability to resolve conflicts was gone. Now 3-6 Mafia, poof, disappeared. Other groups out there, Willie D, my homeboys, and the Ghetto Boys. Willie D made it public. I don't think Willie would mind me mentioning this. And if I say anything incorrect, Will, if you see this, brother, just know, call me and you can come in and give more of your side of the story on this. But what my impression was from talking to Willie about the Ghetto Boys, I met Willie, I met Scarface. Again, another $1 billion brand. Dun, 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 right? Well, apparently there was an issue. There's an issue with Bushwick and the ability, the inability to resolve differences. I don't know whose fault it was. I'm not here to assess blame at all. Willie's my buddy. He was actually in my wedding, so we're actually that close. But I don't know what happened. All I know is that money got lost. because, I got the impression if the Ghetto Boys had gone on tour, they could have toured forever, even after Bushwick died. So you're literally talking about millions of dollars that can be made from the monetization of a powerful brand. There are other examples out there. There's so many others I can name. Biggie and Pac. Think about this. That beef between Biggie and Pac could have been resolved with one sit down with Louis Farrakhan. That could have been resolved with one phone call. That could have been resolved with just everybody standing down, putting their egos to the side and looking at the bigger picture. But instead, this media, this non-black media, I told you, Black Death is profitable for everybody except black people. So the media pushed up, they hyped up the beef between Biggie and Pac, and then egos get involved. Next thing you know, Tupac makes Hit 'Em Up, and next thing you know, somebody's getting killed. Then after that, somebody else gets killed. So after Pac dies and the $1 billion Suge Knight's $1 billion brand is gone, well, guess what? Now it's like, okay, well, we're gonna take your $1 billion brand. Biggie goes out to the West Coast. Biggie doesn't come home. That's billions in black wealth that goes out the window. Now I'm not just talking about the rappers though. You think I'm talking about entertainers? I'm not. This is not a conversation about entertainers. This is the conversation about you. This is a conversation about your family. This is a conversation about how much money you could be making with your homeboy if you put your ego to the side. This is a conversation about how much money you could be making with your kids if you could train everybody to get on code. This is a conversation about all the scenarios that you can think of. I can name a million of them where group activity, the ability to work together as a group, can make the difference between economic life and economic death. Why do you think China operates? I taught finance in China a few years ago, back when I was on the faculty at Syracuse University. And let me tell you about how the Chinese roll that I think you can learn a little bit from. The Chinese operate as a collective. Everything they do is as a group. They don't encourage ego. They don't encourage questioning of authority, which sometimes that can work against them, right? Don't get me wrong. It doesn't always work out well, but they understand hierarchies. They don't disrespect their parents. That's a fate worse than death. You don't do that. You don't disrespect your teachers. You understand what it means to get on code and operate as a collective. And guess what? When you have 10 people trying to accomplish something against one person trying to do the same thing, who do you think is going to win? If you talk about 10 people working together, bringing all their skills, all their talents, all their resources, all their networks, everything they know together to accomplish a goal against one person trying to do it all by themselves because they had to cut everybody off and they ain't talking to nobody. I can't work with my cousin because I don't like my cousin. Then I don't like my baby mom because my baby mom be tripping. You can't get along with nobody. Well, guess what? You can't compete with that. You can't compete against a team. That's like trying to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles by myself. You can take the greatest football player in history, literally the greatest player, whether you think it's a Deion Sanders or a Tom Brady or whatever. You can literally give me 4 of the greatest football players in history, put them on a team of 4 and put them up against the Philadelphia Eagles. There is no way on earth they can win because you can't win a team sport when you've got no team at all. So understand this. The question that you have to ask yourself is this: what is your team? If I'm Quavo and Takeoff, or Quavo and Offset, I would realize the Migos is my team. That's my $1 billion team. If I'm Outkast, my $1 billion team is Andre and Big Boy. Andre and Big Boy can't do separately what they could do individually. When you think about good examples of understanding the ability to work as a team, look at New Edition. New Edition had their issues. They had their fights. Everybody at one point got the ego going and said, I'm going to go solo. Well, I'm going to go solo. So Ralph Tresvant, any New Edition fans in the building, give me a yes if you're a New Edition fan. I don't know if I'm aging myself, but if you're young, you need to go listen to New Edition. That's some good music. So the egos get involved. Next thing you know, Ralph Tresvant says, I'm going solo. Johnny Gill says, I'm going solo. Bobby Brown says, I'm going solo. You know who did the best? When all the groups broke off and went solo, guess which group did the best? Or guess which ones had the most success? Belle Biv DeVoe. Belle Biv DeVoe. Remember, thought it was me. I thought it was me that made that girl this way. I thought it was me. Come to find out she's like that every day. And then they did, what was the other one? That girl is poison. See, my wife's back there dancing because she knows what I'm talking about. Well, you know what? I think Belle Biv DeVoe had the most success. Bobby Brown was killing it. But Bobby Brown got wrapped up in drugs. He got wrapped up in vices. He got wrapped up in drugs and women, Whitney Houston, all this other stuff. Next thing you know, his plane starts going down. Again, to me, what was ironic about New Edition that was beautiful is that the most successful break off of the New Edition group was Belle Biv DeVoe, which many argue these individuals had the least talent of the entire group. They couldn't sing like Ralph Tresvant. They couldn't sing like Johnny Gill. They couldn't sing like Bobby Brown. So they said, okay, Michael Bivins, who I actually met. Michael Bivins was on my podcast at one point. I really liked the guy. And then the tall one, Ronnie, I met him as well. He's in the Black Business School. Good brother. The third one, I never met him. But they got together and said, let's pull together our resources and let's pull together our creativity. And together we can succeed where individually we might fail. None of those guys, no disrespect to any of them, but I cannot imagine any of those three guys from Belle Biv DeVoe doing well individually, at least not doing as well as Bobby Brown or Johnny Gill or Ralph Tresvant. So that group behavior is what helped them win. Then on top of that, which really impressed me, if you want to talk about good examples, what impresses me is how they were able to 30 years later, 40 years later, really, come together and overcome their differences, and they're still touring now. I don't know how much money they're making, but I bet you that New Edition makes at least $10 million a year touring around the world. And they're gonna get this money forever. Forever. Like they can get this until one of them is dead, and then even after that, they'll still get the money. They'll just put a picture of them up on in memorial, like whichever one dies first. They'll just have his picture up. They'll have a moment of silence where everybody will like cry and cheer for the dead one, and they're gonna keep on going. They're gonna be these guys could be making money till they are 90. They could be like the Rolling Stones making that money. That's what group behavior can do for you. If you can overcome your differences, put your ego to the side, work on conflict resolution, work on relationship management, that goes a long way toward building wealth. This was something I had to learn the hard way. This is something that is very anti-culture. One of the things that irritates me is when I don't like getting on the phone with some of these entertainers because their culture is all about ego and it's all about individualism. It's all about narcissism. I think Kanye West is the most brilliant guy on earth. He called me the day after Takeoff died and had a brilliant idea, but it wasn't going to go forward because we're not the same. Our egos are just built very differently, and I think Kanye spent a lot of years being told he's the greatest thing on earth, and he really believes that. And I just really have a hard time trying to figure out how that's going to work because it can't just be about you. It has to be about the collective. If you make it about the collective, then it can be about you. If you build something great as a collective, then eventually you will get your props. If you pour into other people, eventually they're going to pour back into you. And you see what's happening with Kanye's career right now. It's not exactly where it could be. I'm not going to say it's going to fail. I don't want him to fail. I hope he succeeds. But I really think that some of what I'm saying should be considered for anybody that wants to be successful in this world. Now, do me a favor. Please hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, share, subscribe. If you go to my website, boycewatkins.com, you can there's some stuff up there that you can take a look at. I have a $5 a day investing plan that you can do for your kids that'll make sure your kids have $250,000 by the time they're 30. That way they will be economically successful. Also, at the very top of my website is a presentation called How to Make Money Without Working. If you're on Instagram, you can just hit the link in the bio and you'll see it up there. So feel free to go take a look if that's of interest to you. All right, so my final point with this is I want to make sure that I am not on any level dissing the Migos or gossiping about why Quavo and Offset were fighting. I don't really care why they were fighting. I can even look past my issues in terms of the Migos. I saw them on a commercial, a Sprite commercial, and in the Sprite commercial, they were all riding tricycles, and I didn't like that. And it's not to say that they would have known these things, but I had an issue with that Sprite commercial because I remember Malcolm X's bodyguard one day saying that the reason he was sad when Malcolm died is because being around Malcolm allowed him to be a grown man. He said America wants to keep the black man as a little boy. So when I saw the Migos in this Sprite commercial on tricycles, I remember just kind of thinking to myself, or it's a Mountain Dew commercial. Maybe it was a Mountain Dew commercial. Thank you. It was Mountain Dew. It wasn't Sprite. I said Mountain Dew. I said Sprite. I meant to say Mountain Dew. In this Mountain Dew commercial, on these tricycles, I remember just thinking, gosh, I don't know how I would have felt as a little boy to see my daddy riding a tricycle. And again, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe people think I'm overreacting. But if you really think about it like this, that's how they look at you as a black man. America does not take the black man seriously. America sees the black man as somebody who can do two things really well. You can either entertain or you can play a sport, which is another form of entertainment. Those are the two areas that they think that you excel at. They don't see you as an engineer. They don't see you as a doctor. They don't see you as a lawyer. They don't see you as a team owner. They see you as LeBron. They don't see you as a Jerry Jones. So Jerry Jones is a boss. Jerry Jones got caught in that whole racial controversy. He never apologized for shit. He didn't apologize for anything because he's a boss. Whereas athletes, they understand their place. They're going to apologize. You saw the Nick Cannon apology tour, Snoop Dogg apology tour, all these other things, right? So ultimately, America has a perception of the black male as sort of this permanent infant, right? This person that's incapable of taking any significant responsibility, this person who is not even going to take care of his own kids, a person who needs to be guided and mentored by a white man in order to learn what manhood actually looks like. And I don't think that that's the image of most of the black men that I know in the community. Like the other day when I went to Kentucky, I sat down with three brothers who were senior pilots at UPS, and each of them had been flying for 30 years. All of them were captains of these 747 aircraft, and literally teaching UPS pilots how to fly when they came in. And I just remember sitting there with these guys, all of them responsible fathers and husbands and everything else. And wasn't nobody trying to rap, wasn't nobody talking about their basketball career, none of that stuff. We all played sports, but that was something we did when we were kids. Playing sports was a child's game, and then we went into the grown-up world and became successful there. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed being at a table with a bunch of people who were not going to think it was weird that I just wanted to be a grown-ass man. And so shout out to all the grown men out here. I see a lot of you. I bump into you at the All Black National Convention. I see you at conferences. I see you on the street. And I want to applaud you because if you pay attention in America, that's not the image of the black male that they put out there. They'll put out an illiterate 24-year-old as the face of the black man in America before they pay attention to the 45, 50-year-old who actually knows what's going on in the world. Like they'll give the son more power and more wealth and more fame and more status than his father. So what that does is that flips the hierarchy over. So this 24-year-old comes in thinking that he knows everything, and he's up here telling older people what to do because he got a record deal and sold 10 million records. Well, what happens when that son gets caught up in a RICO charge? What happens when that son gets caught up in some situation where he's in the studio and the cops show up and he's got guns and weed and everything else? And next thing you know, he's facing 50 years in prison. Well, then at that point, when he goes off to jail, he's going to realize, wait a minute, I needed to listen to my dad. I needed to listen to my father. And this is not made up stuff. This is not theoretical. I know a person like that. I know a guy who grew up in the thug culture, stopped listening to his daddy, thought his daddy was old fashioned. He was listening to his favorite rapper. Next thing you know, he gets caught up. He gets into drugs. He does something while he's on drugs that he normally would not do that involved a kidnapping and a rape. Next thing you know, this kid gets 50 years in prison with no parole. 50 years in prison with no parole. I met his father, and his father told me, he said, I'm going to try to stay alive as long as I can to try to see my son get out of jail, but I don't know if I'm going to make it because his father was about 55 to 60 years old. And he said that his son, every day, his son says, Dad, I wish I had listened to you. His son writes letters to the children that his father mentors and says, don't be stupid like me. Don't listen to the streets. Don't listen to the culture. Don't listen to what they got going on in the music, because that will put you in a place where you can never come back from. So what I really think in the black community that has to happen, and this is why I do this, it's a little awkward, to be honest with you, when I come out and I talk about this stuff, because I know that I sound preachy. I know that I'm going to get arrows thrown at me. I know all these things, right? So luckily, though, I had a father that taught me to not give a damn what people think, so I'm able to withstand that. But at the same time, I understand what the perceptions are. I know I offend a lot of people, but I think the reason I offend a lot of people is because I believe that in the black community, we got to stop having the BS conversations and start having the real conversations. I think we got to stop glorifying the celebrity culture and start looking up to the culture that is actually going to make us strong. I think we need to start really challenging the ignorance and start looking forward to the intelligence. I think that we've got to redefine and reshape ourselves and have the discussions that need to be had. We need somebody out here that's really going to have the real conversations, because the only good conversations that really exist out here on a mass scale that people get to hear are maybe podcasts like $1 Million Worth of Game, where these guys literally had to do 15, 20 years in prison in order to be able to tell a story. Like, these are the stories stories I kind of grew up on, like, man, don't do what I did. If you do what I did, then these bad things are gonna happen. Well, why in the hell? I need to ask y'all this again. Respect to those guys. I love what they're doing. I think it's very important stuff. But why in the hell does a black man have to throw his whole damn life away in order for him to have knowledge that you're willing to listen to and willing to respect? That's what I don't understand. Why I gotta be 50 years old with a long list of regrets where I literally done missed. I ain't been a free man since the 90s. And I got to go through all of that. I got to give my whole life away, miss 25 years with my kids in order for you to believe the story that I'm telling you. I got to spend 25 years in the white man's system in order for me to have any credibility when I tell you, be careful because these people are out to get you. You know, and so I think that there's space for that. Don't get me wrong. I think that is valuable information. I learned a whole lot. I learned some of my best lessons from people who said, don't do what I did. My father, when he talked to me about drugs, he talked about his heroin addiction he had when he came back from Vietnam. And that's why he told me drugs are bad. These are the things that will happen. You don't want to do what I did, right? When he talked about my father's had to kill people. My father's been through a lot of stuff I never went through. And the thing was, one of the things he said to me is he said, you don't have to touch the fire to know that it's hot. If somebody else made the sacrifice for you and they touched the fire, then you should learn from that. That's what progress looks like. That's what a community looks like when they're making progress. And I need you to kind of question why, as black people, we sometimes think we got to make the same mistake every generation. We got to start over and over every generation. You don't have to do that. You can learn from previous generations and let their sacrifice not be in vain. And also being what would you call proactive as opposed to reactive is really the key to everything. A lot of times we will wait for a tragedy to happen and then we will react with sadness. We wait for the next rapper to get killed and then everybody says RIP. We wait for something terrible to happen financially and then we say, woe is me, it's so hard being black. We wait for something bad to occur with one of our kids and we say, dang, these kids really have it hard. Well, my thought is maybe if you had prepared that kid for the world, they wouldn't be going through that nonsense. Maybe if you had educated that child instead of send him to basketball practice, maybe in addition to, not instead of, but in addition to, maybe if you had invested for him so he had some actual wealth, so he's not job hunting, going job to job, hoping that a white man will hire him, maybe he would be in a better situation. Maybe if you taught him some discipline as a kid, he wouldn't be out mouthing off to some cop who decides he wants to pull the trigger and put your son in a casket, right? So ultimately what I would really encourage you to do, this is for the intelligent people and those who want to be intelligent, is you got to study life. You got to study life. You got to understand God has given you all the information you need. All the information you need about how to be successful is out there. All the information you need about the racial traps that are set for you is out there. All the information you need to do anything that you want to do is out there. Go get that information. Go do it. You know, because one of the things that bothers me, and again, I know I started off talking about the Migos and everything that happened there, and that was really, again, that was my takeoff point. I'm not going to sit and just talk about rappers all day and the gossip about that nonsense. If there's not a bigger issue or a bigger point to be made, I don't even want to talk about it. But I really think at the end of the day, one of the things that America has planned for black people is, again, if you don't have a plan for yourself, they're always going to have a plan for you. They've been using you for 450 years. They're going to keep on using you unless you understand that you have to have your own plan, because their plan for you is to keep you blind, deaf, dumb, and trapped. Their plan for you is to keep you blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid. That's it. Seriously. You sit around and you get mad because the schools are not educating black boys. Well, of course they're not going to educate black boys. They don't want a bunch of Boyce Watkinses running around. Why would they want that? If I was white, I wouldn't want a million Boyce Watkinses to deal with. Just one of them is a pain in the ass. Can you imagine 10 million Boyce Watkinses? Oh my God, right? We'd have all the wealth, right? We'd be dominating everything, right? We sit around and then we think about things like the economic struggle that comes with being black. Well, that's easily preventable. Again, because maybe it's simple for me because my PhD is in finance, but I can just tell you, if you start investing consistently for your child, I literally gave you the game. I gave you $1 million worth of game. This is my version of $1 million worth of game. The ticker symbol for the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF is VOO. VOO. If you put $35 a week on autopilot in VOO for your newborn child, and you never sell, your child will have hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can hand over to them when they're about 28 to 30 years old. So by the time they get to the point where they're the same age as Offset, Takeoff, and Quavo, they're not going to be worried about rapping for their dinner. They're not going to be out here trying to go job to job. They're not going to be in anybody's trap or struggle. They're going to be rich. They're going to be liquid rich. They're going to be a cash money millionaire, and I ain't talking about Lil Wayne. They maybe not millionaire. Now, don't get me wrong, $35 a week is $5 a day. Now, if you triple that amount and you're doing 15 a day, then they become a cash money millionaire. At that point, they have somewhere close to several $100,000 on their way to being a millionaire, especially if they know what to do with that money once you hand it over to them. It's very easy. So just make a plan. If you make that plan and execute the plan and remain consistent, then your kids avoid almost all the economic traps that are out there. And I can just tell you that it's a whole lot better than trying to win the NBA lottery and the NFL lottery and all these other crazy things they got our kids trying to do. We probably lose about a couple $1 trillion in wealth every year from all the black boys who could have become millionaires as business owners, attorneys, doctors, lawyers, or scientists, or whatever, who actually gave all their energy toward trying to get 35 or 40 jobs in the NBA that they're offering in the NBA next year. So just keep that in mind and pick a strategy that's going to work for you. I'm not here to be preachy, but I am here to preach a little bit in hopes that it'll help somebody out there and that you'll hear something different from the pre-existing narrative. All right, guys, my name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. If you'd like to take a look at some of the stuff I have for free on my website, feel free to go to boycewatkins.com. I have a presentation there called How to Make Money Without Working. It's totally free. So if you're on Instagram, you can just hit the link in the bio. Also, last but not least, I have a book called Black American Money. It's a whole series of books, actually, that's out there. So if you're interested in taking a look, just go to drboycebooks.com. Or if you go to Amazon and just look up my name, a lot of my books are there. Just if you could leave a review, I'd really appreciate it. So God bless you guys. Thank you all for listening. And if I offended anybody in this conversation, just know I ain't got enough time to really give a damn about the haters. I just want to support those who understand where I'm coming from. So take care, everybody. Have a good night. And catch us on Spotify also. Look up the Dr. Boyce Breakdown. I'll see you guys later. Take care now. Peace.